Ho, 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 gentlemen. The holidays have come early this year as Manscaped have the gift that keeps on trimming. Santa's beard isn't so appealing when it's coming out of your trousers, and that's why Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, have you covered this holiday season. Now available in your country, join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped to keep their trees trimmed and ornaments polished. Go to manscaped.com and use code DTR for 20% off plus free shipping.
Stafford under pressure, gonna tuck it away. He's in. Darrell Henderson, he's off and running. Has Woods, touchdown. Cooper Kupp just went up and took it away.
Van Jefferson for the touchdown.
Aaron Donald smothers him. Jalen Ramsey put the pop on. Sacked by Leonard Floyd, having a day again. Darius Williams with a diving hit.
Jordan Fuller comes up with his second interception of the night.
All right, guys, welcome back to Downtown Rams. As always, I'm your host, Alexis Kraft, joined here with my co-host, Jake Ellenbogen, and we are coming to you guys with our preview episode for the Los Angeles Rams matchup against the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. They do play tomorrow, January 2nd at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, so they are in that opening hour slot. Jake, going against the Baltimore Ravens in week 17. It's actually primed to be a pretty exciting matchup. I think people are excited for this game. The Baltimore Ravens are in the AFC North, which is like somehow turning into one of the weirder divisions where they went from being one of the best divisions to one of the worst. And now it's kind of up and down of who is the best team in that division. The Rams, obviously on a bit of a hot streak, coming off a win. We've been playing really well for the most part, with the exceptions here and there. But Jake, looking at this matchup of the Rams going to Baltimore to take on the Ravens, let's just start pretty simple. I want to start with our offense because our offense has been kind of our weak point. If you had to pick something specific for the Rams, our play calling with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford at quarterback have been the two, in my opinion, biggest struggles for this Rams team. So if you're the Rams offense and Sean McVay going into Baltimore, what is the number one thing that you decide that you need to do to take on Baltimore's defense?
Well, Alexis, last week, I'm sure you saw it. T. Higgins, obviously he just absolutely went off and he took me out of pretty much every single fantasy football playoff matchup. So I know him very well. T. Higgins went over 200 yards receiving. He had 2 touchdowns, had a third that was called back. This is the guy that took advantage of that depleted secondary. I mean, we're talking about the Ravens they are absolutely depleted at this point, really banged up. And, I think you have to go back to, obviously, before the season started, Marcus Peters, we know him very well. He was ruled out for the rest of the year. He suffered, I believe, a torn ACL early on in the season. Going through it, I mean, they lose him. They lose Marlon Humphrey. They've had all sorts of injuries. Jimmy Smith is another one. So, really Anthony Averett has had to take over as really the guy, throughout this season. They've really gone into their bag of tricks here. I mean, using guys like Tony Jefferson, an old one in the back end of the secondary. They had to sign him to the practice squad. Tavon Young has had to take on an increased role as a guy that is no longer really just a nickel corner. I mean, they're asking him to do a little bit more. Daryl Worley started 83% of snaps last week. Kevin Seymour started 99% of snaps. This is somebody that hadn't played pretty much all year and was asked to kind of play, week 14. And then, of course, he goes from playing 25% of snaps week 14 to now we're looking at him in week 16 last week playing 99%. So this is a secondary, Alexis, that you have to take advantage of. I mean, I understand they're going to sell out to stop guys like Cooper Kupp and Odell and all of that. But you have to keep in mind, they're going to have to, basically pick their poison essentially, because the great thing about the Rams offense is they've figured out, how to get the run game going. And not only that, but stick with it. Sean McVay had, once again, another really nice showing from Sony Michel. He's had the most, rushing yards over the last 3 weeks in the league. And, I think a lot of that is because Sean McVay has changed his approach. They're running the ball more. Yes, situationally, we'll sit there and we'll get annoyed and complain about the way, they use the run at times. But it all comes out in the wash. And, like last week, Alexis, against the Vikings, he ends up, he carries the ball 27 times. So, this is somebody that is very well appreciated by the coaching staff. Carried the ball 18 times against Seattle the week prior. And to me, I think because of that, teams are going to either want to sell out to stop Sony Michel or sell out to stop a guy like Cooper Kupp, even Van Jefferson over the top. And the Ravens just are so banged up to this point that there's no excuse. The Rams have to take advantage. I think the best thing to do is not overreact to a last week's game against the Bengals, because let's keep this in mind. They had Joe Burrow in the game even when the game was not in doubt. He's throwing 50 yards down the field. Not saying I have anything against that, but those numbers were a little inflated from that drive. Regardless of that, my point is that the Rams have to just play their style of football. You have to take advantage of a banged up secondary, but you can do that naturally by just the flow of the game, running the ball, playing a balanced style offense, and not showing too many weaknesses. And if you do that, I think you have a really good chance of beating this team.
I totally agree. I think, if I'm the Rams offense, I'm looking at this Baltimore secondary, and if I'm Sean McVay, I'm salivating at the mouth, because we know the type of offense that he likes to run. We know he likes to throw the football. We know what kind of plays he likes to call. And this is the perfect defense to do that against. Obviously, a bummer for them that they're beat up in the secondary. It's definitely something we can take advantage of, especially if our offense remains fluid and we can stay in a good rhythm. That has been something we've struggled with. Obviously, you look at the game last week, it took us really until the fourth quarter to start, running a smooth offense, especially with Matthew Stafford. If the Rams offense, in my opinion, can come out and play very competitively from the get-go, I think we should have no problem against this Ravens defense. If Matthew Stafford, is in sync with the game, isn't making any bad passes, isn't throwing any interceptions, missing open receivers, etc. He's got guys like Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham, Tyler Higbee, Van Jefferson. All these guys should be able to take on the Ravens secondary. So I think that's going to be really, something interesting to keep an eye on, because if they come out and do the exact opposite of that, if they don't, take advantage of the secondary, that's going to be concerning. But I'm not too worried about it. Like you said, this Ravens team, unfortunately for them, very, very beat up. They have to, be a little worried going against Matthew Stafford and the Rams, knowing their potential and what they can do there. I want to talk a little bit about the run game, though, because, we mentioned this Ravens secondary. I'm not super impressed with their the front of their defense either. Jake, do you think that Sean McVay is going to keep a bit of perspective, we'll say, and run the football against the Ravens? Or do you think that he's going to see what's going on with their secondary and kind of do what he's been doing and maybe pushing the pass game a little bit too much?
Do you want the obvious answer? I think we know what Sean McVay is going to do. I think the hope is that he's not going to do what we think he's going to do. You don't want to be too obvious. You don't want to stick out like a sore thumb and be, too predictable on your offense. And that's my only concern about this game. And the only way I really feel like the Rams have any sort of chance of losing, and I don't want to even say that, Alexis, because this is a January football game in Baltimore, going to be a cold game, but I feel like the only real chance that they have of losing is if Sean McVay gets too pass happy. You want to keep Stafford, a little bit, even if you can, under the 40 pass attempts per game, type of, like that benchmark, so to speak. And when you start getting him into the 50s and stuff, we've seen that with Jared Goff. Sometimes when guys are throwing too much, you put them in such a bad spot where they can throw a pick just from how much they're throwing and just get too careless. What I don't want to see is Sean McVay say, okay, well, this is our game. We're going to get Cooper Kupp over, we're going to get him to 231 yards to break Calvin Johnson's record in 16 games. And no, I don't think Sean McVay's like this, but you do something like that, or you go like pass happy with Stafford. I feel like Stafford's best games are the ones where he doesn't have to throw 40 times a game. I mean, last week he threw 37, and I mean, he didn't play well, but I mean, there have been moments like you go back to say, week 1 against the Bears. And in a sense, this is kind of a similar defense at the moment because the Bears secondary is banged up going into that game. And, their front is a little more stout, and normally they'd have a good defense. The Bears game, Stafford went 20 of 26. So, realistically speaking, I think if you can keep Stafford under 40 pass attempts, and I don't even like to say that because I don't want to take anything away from the guy, but I just think it's putting him in an unnecessary, risk element, if you will. Whereas I feel like if you just run the ball, run it, 20 plus times. I understand you don't have Cam Akers in all likelihood going, so it's going to be, thin at the running back spot. So you don't want to run 30 times or anything like that. But give Sony, 20 to 25 carries, maybe, 28 at the max, and then just have Stafford throw in under 35 times. And I think that is conducive to winning football. It gets everybody involved. And, I stick by that. I think really you just don't want to see him playing backyard football. You don't want to see him in the empty sets and things like that. I know you're going to, but I mean the whole game, Alexis. I want to see some variations, and maybe they could try some things, before they go into the, the playoffs. I'd like to see them maybe, try to use some movement in the backfield, maybe some more split back. I saw them doing it last week on film with, Cooper Kupp and Sony Michel. Enjoyed seeing that. Maybe get Odell used a little bit in that regard. Maybe even get him throwing a pass. I don't know. Just keep things, obviously not predictable. And I think you're going to win this game. And I think that's how they need to proceed.
Well, yeah, definitely keeping the other team on their toes. Can't go wrong with that. But I want to talk now about the Baltimore Ravens offense, particularly their quarterback position, because that's something we obviously have to watch out for, being the opposing team, because typically their quarterback is Lamar Jackson, who is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. He's very elusive, makes amazing plays all the time, gives opposing defenses trouble. However, he has been out with an ankle injury, and Tyler Huntley has been playing in his place. Now, I'm going to be honest, and Jake, you and I talked about this before the podcast. I am not so sure that whoever the Ravens have at quarterback is going to impact this game that much. However, there is a difference between Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley. Tyler Huntley has been playing well. I'll give him that. I know that he's impressed a lot of people. I quite frankly wasn't too familiar with him until this season, but I've seen some clips and some highlights of him, and he definitely, is a deserving backup in this league. However, Lamar Jackson is a totally other story. I don't think, and as you said as well earlier today, I don't think that they're going to play Lamar Jackson tomorrow. I think that he's still kind of borderline. I don't know that the Ravens are willing to risk him getting injured further in this game. And I think that we are going to be seeing Tyler Huntley. I know that you agree, as I mentioned, but can you elaborate on that and what we need to watch out for with Tyler Huntley?
Yeah, Alexis, I really just think at the end of the day, you have to watch out for that mobility, which is something that there's really no excuse if they can't defend it. They've defended it against Kyler pretty well. They've defended it against Russell Wilson. They've defended it countless times. You're going up against mobile quarterbacks most of the time in this league. I mean, really, that's what the league is turning into, and so I just don't think there's any excuse at this point, but really you do have to watch the scrambling ability of Tyler Huntley. This is somebody that I don't think can be, slept on. I mean, I think when you go back to week 15, he's asked to start that game against Green Bay, play 70 snaps in that game. And, he comes away with a 31-30 loss. I understand they lost, but they were in a game that no one gave them a chance with. And they started off really slow and really picked up the pace. So I look at that and I'm thinking, this isn't a guy that I'm about to just totally write off. And I haven't, written off the Ravens because, again, it's January football. We're not in domination December anymore, and we're not in no-win November, but we don't know what January holds. So that's the first thing. The second thing, when you go back and you look at the Ravens game against the Browns, Tyler Huntley had to come into that game in week 14. Lamar started, then he left the game early on a hit. And, Tyler Huntley comes in and, he ends up almost leading them to a win in that one. So, I mean, Josh Johnson played week 16 with Huntley on the COVID list. I understand they got blown out, but I don't think Johnson played particularly that bad either. I mean, you look at Johnson, he threw over 300 yards, 28 of 40, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Another guy, their running back room, Alexis, at the end of the day is just all mobile factors. These guys can run the ball. So I think it's important, and I think it really helps the offense, where I'm not trying to take anything away from Lamar Jackson. I love him. But when you have all backups that can, have that similar style of quarterback play, it makes it really a lot easier on the receivers and the running backs and the offensive line and the OC in general to game plan around.
Everybody is trying to cash in on the next best crypto, but if you want guaranteed way to double your money, all you got to do is head on over to MyBookie and use promo code JKDTR. It's simple. Sign up with MyBookie with promo code JKDTR, and your first deposit is instantly doubled all the way up to $1,000. How's that for a quick turnaround in your investment? With the NFL playoff race heating up and college bowl season just around the corner, double your firepower at MyBookie to get action in on the most important games of the season. Build your own props, create multi-game parlays, and take part in a host of MyBookie cash prize contests. This is the best time of year to both watch and bet on sports because you know who the winners are by now. Don't miss out. Double your first deposit by using promo code JKDTR and keep your eyes peeled for more exclusive holiday promotions coming soon at mybookie.ag. Bet anything, bet anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
Girls, I don't know about you, but I'm tired of finding a bush when I go down in my man's chimney. Dear Santa, all I want this holiday season is for my man to have smooth jingle balls. Thankfully, Manscaped answered with the Performance Package 4.0, so I don't have to find Santa's beard in my man's pants again. Ladies, this holiday season, get your man products that will leave him smelling fresh with their all-new ultra-premium body wash and a 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner. It's time to give the man in your life the gift of beautiful skin, hair, and balls this holiday season. Go to manscaped.com and use code DTR for 20% off plus free shipping. Yeah, I mean, it's something to keep an eye on because like I said, I don't think that Tyler Huntley, or I do think that Tyler Huntley is going to be playing against us. But if I'm the Ravens and I'm facing a team like the Rams, maybe I am a bit more inclined to play Lamar Jackson. I don't think they're going to risk the injury, but you have to wonder if that's something that deep down inside they are debating because they know that they're going to need all the help that they can get to take on the Rams, as we mentioned, who have been on a roll. Looking at the other, aspects of this Baltimore Ravens offense. It's kind of interesting because their receiving core has been an issue for them for a while, but you look at Hollywood Brown, obviously very good. Rashad Bateman, their rookie who's finally playing, very good. Mark Andrews, who is their tight end, obviously very good. Jake, what do you think our defense needs to do in order to stop the passing game of the Ravens? Because that is what I expect the Ravens to do more so than push their run game against the Rams.
Yeah, well, I think Rashad Bateman was, starting to really come on towards the end of this season. He dealt with an injury and didn't get to play until week 6. And you think about it, right off the bat, he has 65% of snaps in week 6. And now, we're talking 93 in week 15 and 81 in week 16. This is somebody that they trust, and this is somebody that they like. I mean, obviously Marquise Brown, we know what he can do, what he did against the Rams in 2019. And Mark Andrews is one of the best tight ends in football. So, I think those are the guys that you really have to watch out for. You did, the noticeable, increase in play for Tylan Wallace due to injury, of course. They've kind of, backed off Sammy Watkins, former Ram. They've backed off him quite a bit after playing him early on in the season. Now, he played 5% of snaps last week. So did Miles Boykin. So really they've been looking at, guys like Tylan Wallace, James Prochet, and, Devin Duvernay to kind of, take on the rest of that load after Marquise Brown, Rashad Bateman, who you mentioned, and, of course, Mark Andrews. And, really what it comes down to is, Mark Andrews is just so good in the red zone. And, this team is a bend don't break defense, and they've been really good in the red zone. They've been put in some bad spots, and they've still held up. Even if the Ravens are able to get in the red zone, Mark Andrews is a guy, he's a mismatch, and he could be a guy that, if the Rams are trading, those field goals where they're getting the red zone and they're, settling for Matt Gay field goals. If, the defense keeps allowing, the Ravens in the red zone, I trust, their ability having guys like Bateman, Mark Andrews, and of course, a guy in Marquise Brown who has 6 touchdowns. Andrews has 9. He's having an incredible season. So you always have to keep in mind that those guys are good enough to kind of, not take over games, because I don't want to act like they could take this game over, but the Rams definitely have to be ready for them, because again, Andrews is somebody that could break a game open or could be your equalizer. And so I think it's going to be, a tough day at the office for guys like maybe, they put Ramsey on Andrews. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that, or Ramsey on Bateman, and they have, Deontay, they have Darius Williams on, Marquise Brown, and, maybe you see some Jordan Fuller in there. I mean, it's going to be a little bit of a scheme, thing that they have to do there, because regardless of who's playing quarterback, we watched the Packers game. I mean, Tyler Huntley can play. He can make NFL throws, and I don't think it's really an issue with him to connect with guys. He doesn't have incredible accuracy or anything like that. It's not like the greatest thing you've ever seen, but it's above a backup level. I mean, he plays at a pretty high level for being a backup. And keep in mind, he has been behind Lamar Jackson. He is with, Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator. And they're running an offense that he's already run. He's pretty comfortable in. And, this is somebody, if he does start, he's coming off the COVID list after missing last week in a game that I'm sure he felt like could have been a lot different had he played. He's going to be hungry for this game, especially in front of the home crowd, in a game that, basically decides their playoff hopes.
Yeah, and that's going to lead us into our kind of stat predictions for this game. I mean, Jake, I have to bite because I just see what's going on with the Baltimore Ravens secondary, and I am channeling my inner Sean McVay and getting very pass happy. And I'm going to say it could go terribly wrong, as we have seen it, unfortunately, many instances this season. But I'm getting pass happy, and I'm saying that Matthew Stafford is going to throw for 3+ touchdowns. I think Odell Beckham's going to have 2 touchdowns. I think Cooper Kupp's going to get a touchdown, and I've got to give some love to the run game. And I'm going to say that we are going to also have 2 running touchdowns, which, if you did the math, means that I'm predicting the Rams get 5 touchdowns against the Baltimore Ravens, which I'll discuss more in our score predictions. Defensively, I think we might see a couple interceptions. If it's Tyler Huntley playing, which is what we expect, I could see him breaking a little bit against this Rams defense. If we can get pressure up front, I could see him making some silly throws and the Rams capitalizing with some interceptions. So I'm going to say that the Rams have a 2 interception game. Jake, what are your predictions?
Well, so, since our podcast is sponsored by Prize Picks and you and I both play, I'm going to go through the Rams props and I'm going to say over under, if that helps. So, because I mean, you're way ahead of me. You're like, yeah, this guy's going to have 2 touchdowns. I'm like, oh boy, I was not ready. Okay, so Matthew Stafford, his over under is 277.5 passing yards. You can go over to Prize Picks and use promo code DTRAMS. And it'll double your first deposit. So definitely go and do that. But Matthew Stafford, 277.5 passing yards. Over the last 5 games, the last 2, he has not gotten over that. He went over the last 3, or the 3 prior, Arizona, Jacksonville, and Green Bay. This kind of just feels like a game where, I mean, he could get over it. He's averaging 265 over the last 5. I'm going to say he goes under the 277.5. I don't even know if I'm necessarily going to put money on that, so to speak, but that's kind of where I'm thinking there. As far as touchdowns, Sony Michel minus, let's see, 0.5. I'm going to say Sony Michel gets in the end zone. Okay. I think Sony Michel gets in the end zone. The really interesting one for the Rams over on Prize Picks, Really interesting. And I'm having a hard time not picking all four of these guys. You ready for this? Cooper Kupp, 104.5 over under. Odell, 44.5. Van Jefferson, 42.5. And Tyler Higbee, 29.5. So Higbee's gotten it in the last three of the last 5 games. He had it back-to-back against Jacksonville and Minnesota, missed it against Green Bay, missed it against San Francisco, and had it against Tennessee. Cooper Kupp, I mean, he's gone over 104.5 4 out of the last 5 games. Van Jefferson, he's gone 2 of the last 5, but I do like the matchup a lot against that secondary. And Odell is 2 of the last 5, but again, I do like that matchup a lot against the secondary. So I'm going to go with... I think Stafford is going to throw under. I think you're going to get an over on Tyler Higbee. I think he'll have over 29.5 receiving yards. I think you're going to go over on Cooper Kupp and potentially over on one of, if not both, of Odell and Van. But I think that's really going to be it for the Rams passing attack. And if you do the math, all those guys added up still wouldn't get you over Matthew Stafford's passing yards. So he would need more than 104.5 out of Kupp, 44.5 out of Beckham, 42.5 out of Van, and 29.5 out of Tyler Higbee. I'm going to say he throws 2 touchdowns and Sony Michel runs in 1. And then I'm going to say that there's one of those end arounds. I think we're going to get a rushing receiver touchdown. That's my big woo moment. And I think the Rams are going to sack Huntley / Lamar Jackson, whoever plays. I think they'll get over 3 sacks in this one. Sorry, that was a lot.
Well, it's all right. We're going to get into our score predictions now.
Schedule, huh?
Yeah, no. Score predictions. And I am going to deviate from what I said at the beginning of the season. 1, because Lamar Jackson isn't playing, but also 2, because this offense, I think, is a lot more capable than I predicted at the beginning of the season. So, at the beginning of the season, I said that the Rams were going to defeat the Ravens 24-21. Like I mentioned in my stat prediction, I do think that the Rams are going to get 5 touchdowns. So I am going to have the Rams scoring 35 points and the Ravens staying with 21 points. Like I said, I don't think Tyler Huntley has played that bad. And I think that our defense, at times can give up some silly plays. So I think that the Ravens might be able to put some on the board, against us. However, like I said, I think it's just going to be a dominant performance by our offense and that we are going to take home the W in Baltimore. Jake, what are your thoughts?
Yes. So it looks as though, I'm looking at it right now, AccuWeather is saying the game time weather, Alexis, I don't know if you saw this, is actually going to be 63 degrees. So there's going to be no snow, obviously, because you can't snow at 63 degrees. That changes it for me because I thought, it might be a little colder. They might run the ball a little bit more. Oh, man, 63 degrees. I wouldn't be surprised if McVay throws all over the field. Rams are projected to win. It is very possible. According to teamrankings.com, the Rams are projected to win 26.8 to 20.2. They are the spread consensus pick by 70%. 6-point spread favorite. And the over-under is 46.5, which I do have the over on that. And I'm going to go with the Rams covering that spread. They're 8-7 against the spread this year. Baltimore is 7-8. I'm going to say the Rams win 31-21. The Rams are actually, if you didn't know this, are averaging fewer yards per game than Baltimore. Baltimore is averaging 399.6. The Rams 392.8. But I think what it comes down to is the Rams defense is playing a lot better. They have more weapons on offense. Regardless if it's a healthy Lamar or not, I still think that they would win this. And they are exactly the opposite, Alexis, because over the last 5 games, Baltimore started off on the 28th, while the Rams lost to Green Bay 36-28 to wrap up their losing streak. Baltimore won their last game on the 28th against Cleveland 16-10. After that, they've dropped 20-19 in Pittsburgh, 24-22 against Cleveland in Cleveland. They lost to Green Bay 31-30, and they lost in Cincinnati 41-21. Whereas the Rams have gone and won 4 straight games: Jacksonville, Arizona, Seattle, and Minnesota. I just feel like you see those 3 close games, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Green Bay. I think that was them really just going all out, and now things are bleak. I understand, desperate teams are dangerous, but this team just lost by 20 points last week. I think that they lose by 10 this week. I'm going to go with 31-21. Like I said, Rams win this game and they improve to 12-4, which is. It feels weird that there's still a game left. Going to have to get used to that.
Yeah. I'm really excited that this is a noon game for me. I know that a lot of people in Pacific Coast, Pacific time sometimes might not like the early games on a Sunday. But it's not that early for me. And it's not that early for you, Jake, because we're in Central and Eastern time. So it works out perfect. And it is going to be streaming in St. Louis, where I'm currently at, thankfully, because they moved it. Yep, nationally televised. So I am very excited to watch this game. I have high hopes for our Rams. I think we are going to play well, and we are going to leave Baltimore with the win. But guys, we will be back after the game with a recap episode. Until then, you can follow us on social media at Downtown Rams. You can follow me on Twitter at the Alexis Craft, and you can follow Jake at JK Bogan. We will see you guys after the game, but until then, stay safe, take care, and go Rams. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code DTR at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and make sure to use code DTR. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.